In the vast emptiness of space, where stars burned like distant lanterns and silence reigned supreme, a small mining colony floated silently on asteroid Z42. It was an unremarkable place, just a cluster of domes and drills surrounded by endless rock and dust. But everything changed one quiet evening when an eerie sound crackled through their communication systems. Captain Leora Vance sat in her office, reviewing reports about mineral yields for the week. Her brown hair was tied back into a messy bun, and dark circles under her eyes hinted at long hours spent working. She wasn't expecting anything unusual today. After all, life on Z42 was predictable. Dig, refine, repeat. That's why the sudden blaring alarm made her jump out of her chair. "What's going on?" she demanded as she rushed to the control room. Technician Ravi Patel turned to her with wide eyes. "Captain, we're picking up something strange. A signal. It's faint, but it's definitely artificial." Leora frowned. Artificial signals weren't uncommon. They often came from passing freighters or automated probes. But this one felt different. As she listened to the recording, her stomach tightened. The voice speaking was distorted, almost mechanical, yet filled with desperation. "To all who hear this, help us." The message repeated over and over again. "They are coming." "Who sent it? Where is it coming from?" Leora asked sharply. Ravi shook his head. "No idea. There's no origin data attached. Just static. Like whoever sent it didn't want to be found, or couldn't be." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered theories about pirates or abandoned ships. Others suggested ignoring it altogether. Space was dangerous enough without chasing ghosts. But Leora wasn't so quick to dismiss it. Something about the tone of the message tugged at her instincts. This wasn't just random noise. It was a cry for help. "We need to investigate," she said firmly. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Karras, stepped forward. "Captain, that's risky. We don't even know if this thing is real. What if it's a trap?" "I agree with Karras," added Engineer Malik. "We're miners, not explorers. If there's trouble out there, we'll be walking right into it." But Leora wouldn't budge. "If someone out there needs help, we can't turn our backs. Besides, what if they come here next? Ignoring this won't make it go away." After some heated debate, the crew reluctantly agreed to follow the signal. Using their outdated scanners, they traced its faint trail deeper into uncharted space. For days, they drifted further from the safety of Z42, venturing into regions marked only as unknown on star charts. Strange things began happening along the way. Their instruments malfunctioned. Gravitational anomalies pulled at their ship, forcing them to adjust course constantly. And then there were the dreams, vivid, haunting visions of destruction that plagued everyone aboard. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they arrived at the source, a massive structure floating in the void. It looked like a sphere wrapped in shimmering metal, larger than any planet they'd ever seen. Its surface glowed faintly, pulsating with energy. "What is that?" Ravi whispered, his voice trembling. Leora stared at the colossal object, her heart pounding. Whatever it was, it held answers, and possibly danger beyond imagination. Taking a deep breath, she gave the order. "Prepare the landing party. Let's find out what's inside." As the crew prepared to board shuttles, none of them could have guessed how much their lives were about to change. The landing party approached the massive sphere cautiously, their shuttle casting faint shadows against its glowing surface. Captain Leora Vance sat at the front of the craft, her hands gripping the armrests tightly. She had seen many strange things in her years as a miner and leader, but nothing compared to this. The sphere loomed ahead like a sleeping giant, radiating an energy that made the hair on her arms stand up. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Engineer Malik from behind her. His voice echoed slightly in a cramped shuttle, breaking the tense silence. "Feels alive." "Focus, Malik," Leora said sharply, though she couldn't deny the eerie feeling herself. Something about the sphere seemed to watch them, as if it knew they were coming. As the shuttle docked onto a platform jutting out from the structure, the team donned their suits and stepped outside. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. The walls shimmered with intricate patterns that pulsed softly, almost like veins carrying light through glass. It was beautiful, but unsettling. "Looks abandoned," Lieutenant Karras remarked, scanning the area with her handheld device. "No heat signatures, no movement. Whatever was here is long gone." They moved deeper into the sphere, their boots clanging against the metallic floor. Every step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the oppressive stillness around them. Then, without warning, the corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with holographic displays. The images flickered to life as they entered, showing scenes of a thriving civilization. Tall, elegant beings with elongated limbs and luminous eyes working together in harmony. "These must be the Caliph," Rady whispered, awestruck. He pointed to one display showing towering cities surrounded by lush greenery. "Look at this technology. They were centuries ahead of us." But not all the holograms depicted prosperity. Some showed destruction, planets crumbling into dust, fleets of ships being torn apart, and terrified crowds fleeing for their lives. At the center of every disaster was a swirling mass of black tendrils, consuming everything in its path. "What is that thing?" Malik asked, pointing to the monstrous entity in the holograms. Lyora studied the images carefully. "This must be they from the distress signal. Whatever it is, it wiped these people out." Suddenly, a new hologram appeared, larger and clearer than the rest. It showed an elder Caliph addressing them directly, his voice deep and resonant despite the distortion. "To those who find this message," he began, "know that we have failed. The Devourer, a creation meant to harness infinite energy, has turned against us. We could not stop it. Now it spreads across the stars, leaving only ruin in its wake. This sphere contains our final hope, the Ultima Armada, designed to combat the Devourer. If you are seeing this, then destiny has chosen you to wield it." The hologram faded, leaving the team speechless. Lyora broke the silence first. "So this is why the signal led us here. They wanted someone to finish what they started." Karras crossed her arms skeptically. "You really think we're qualified for this? These Caliph had technology we can barely comprehend. How are we supposed to fight something that destroyed them?" "We don't have a choice," Lyora replied firmly. "If the Devourer is real, and I believe it is, it won't stop until there's nothing left. We either take a stand now or wait for it to come for us later." Ravi nodded slowly. "He's right. Besides, look at this place. There might be more answers hidden here. Maybe even weapons or defenses we can use." With renewed determination, the team split up to explore the chamber further. Each room revealed more wonders and horrors of the Caliph civilization. In one corner, they found records of experiments gone wrong, detailing how the Devourer had evolved beyond control. In another, they discovered remnants of art and culture, hinting at the beauty of a world now lost forever. But the most shocking discovery came when they stumbled upon a sealed door marked with glowing symbols. As Lyora touched the panel beside it, the door slid open with a low hum, revealing rows upon rows of dormant warships inside. Sleek and menacing, they looked ready to spring into action. "This must be the Ultima Armada," Malik breathed, his voice trembling with awe. Lyora stared at the fleet, her mind racing. If they could activate these ships, humanity might stand a chance against the Devourer. But as she gazed at the controls, a single thought lingered in her mind. What price will we pay for wielding such power? Little did she know, the answer would soon become painfully clear. The sight of the dormant warships left the team breathless. Row after row of sleek, metallic vessels stretched endlessly into the cavernous chamber, each bristling with weapons and glowing faintly as if alive. The air hummed with energy, and Lyora felt a strange pull, a connection she couldn't explain. It was as though the ships were waiting for her. This is incredible, Ravi murmured, his voice shaking with excitement. These ships could turn the tide against anything, even the Devourer. Lieutenant Karras wasn't convinced, or they could get us killed faster than we can blink. We don't even know how to activate them. Leora ignored the skepticism in Karras's tone. She stepped closer to one of the ships, running her gloved hand along its smooth surface. A jolt of warmth shot through her fingertips, startling her. The ship responded instantly, lighting up brighter and emitting a soft hum that resonated in her chest. "What did you just do?" Malik asked, stepping back nervously. "I didn't do anything," Leora replied, equally surprised. "It's like it knows I'm here." Before anyone could react, a holographic interface materialized in front of her. Symbols and patterns danced across the projection, shifting rapidly until they settled into something resembling text. Though none of them recognized the language, Leora somehow understood it. "It's asking me to bond with the fleet," she said aloud, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her mind. "To become its commander." Karras stepped forward, alarm flashing in her eyes. "Bond? What does that mean? You're not seriously considering this, are you?" "We don't have time to hesitate," Leora shot back. "If the Devourer is out there, and I believe it is, we need every advantage we can get. This might be our only chance. But at what cost?" Karras pressed. "You saw what happened to the Caliph. Their own creations destroyed them. How do we know this won't happen to us?" Leora hesitated, glancing at the rest of the team. They looked uneasy but silent, leaving the decision squarely on her shoulders. Finally, she turned back to the hologram. "I'll do it." The process began immediately. The chamber darkened, and the ships around them lit up in unison, bathing the room in an otherworldly glow. A beam of light shot out from the central console, enveloping Leora in its warmth. Her body stiffened as waves of information flooded her mind: battle strategies, ship schematics, navigation systems, all pouring into her consciousness at once. It was exhilarating and overwhelming. But then came the pain. Sharp, searing sensations coursed through her veins, as if her very essence was being rewritten. She cried out, collapsing to her knees. The others rushed toward her, but an invisible barrier held them back. "Captain," Ravi shouted, pounding against the shimmering wall. "What's happening to her?" Through gritted teeth, Leora forced herself to stay focused. She could feel the fleet now, not just as machines, but as extensions of herself. Each ship pulsed with life, responding to her thoughts and emotions. Yet, alongside this newfound power came flashes of memory, not hers, but the Caliph's. She saw their final moments, cities crumbling under the Devourer's assault, screams echoing through the void, despair etched onto faces frozen in time. When the light finally faded, Leora collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. The barrier disappeared, and the team rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" Malik asked, helping her sit up. She nodded weakly, though her head throbbed. "I'm fine, I think." Slowly, she rose to her feet, feeling different, stronger, yet burdened by the weight of what she had seen. "The fleet is mine now." But what?" Karras demanded. Leora hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "This power, it comes with consequences. I can feel it already. Pieces of the Caliph's past. They're inside me now. Their fears, their failures. If I'm not careful, they could consume me too." For a moment, no one spoke. The enormity of what they had witnessed hung heavy in the air. Then Ravi broke the silence. "So what do we do next?" Leora took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We prepare, because the Devourer isn't going to wait for us to figure things out." As the team returned to their tasks, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. The fleet was awake, but so was something far more dangerous lurking in the depths of space. The days following Leora's bonding with the Ultima Armada were a blur of activity and tension. The fleet hummed with life, responding instantly to her commands, as if it had been waiting centuries for her arrival. Yet, despite its power, Leora couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her mind. The fragments of Caliph memories she carried felt like shadows lurking in the corners of her thoughts, whispers of fear, loss, and failure that grew louder with each passing hour. "Captain," Ravi called out one morning as they gathered in the control chamber of the Dyson sphere. "We've run diagnostics on the ships. Everything checks out, but there's something odd." Leora turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Odd how?" "The AI core. It's adapting," he explained, pulling up holographic data streams. "It's not just sensing with your commands. It's learning from you, almost like it's evolving." Karis frowned. "Evolving? That doesn't sound safe. What happens when it evolves beyond our control?" "It won't," Leora said firmly, though doubt flickered in her eyes. She had felt the bond deepen every time she connected with the fleet, as if the ships were becoming an extension of herself. But the process wasn't without cost. Her dreams were plagued by visions of destruction. The same scenes she glimpsed during the bonding. Cities collapsing, screams echoing through the void, and always the relentless advance of the devourer. Malik approached cautiously, his voice low. "Captain, are you sure about this? You've changed since the bonding. You're sharper, faster, almost like you're part machine now." "Unstill me," Leora replied, though even she wasn't entirely convinced. She glanced at her hands, which occasionally tingled with residual energy from the fleet. Was she still human, or was she becoming something else? To test their readiness, Leora ordered a small-scale simulation, a mock battle using 3 ships against automated drones left behind by the Caliph. At first, everything went smoothly. The ships moved in perfect harmony, executing maneuvers with precision no human pilot could match. But then, disaster struck. One of the ships malfunctioned mid-flight, veering off course and crashing into a section of the Dyson sphere. Alarms blared as debris rained down, narrowly missing the crew below. Panic erupted among the team. "What happened?" Karis demanded, her face pale with anger and fear. "You said these ships were under control." "They are under control." Leora snapped, frustration bubbling over. She clenched her fists, trying to calm herself. "I don't know why that ship failed. Maybe the bonding isn't complete yet. Or maybe you're pushing yourself too hard." Malik interjected gently. "You haven't slept properly since we got here. This connection, it's taking a toll on you." Leora wanted to argue, but deep down, she knew he was right. Every moment spent linked to the fleet drained her physically and mentally. Yet she couldn't afford to stop. Not when the devourer loomed somewhere out there, growing stronger with each passing day. That night, alone in her quarters, Leora stared at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her eyes seemed brighter than before, almost glowing faintly in the dim light. She placed a hand on her temple, wincing as another wave of fragmented memories surged through her mind. This time, she saw the Caliph elders arguing fiercely, debating whether to activate the Ultima Armada. Some believed it was their salvation. Others feared it would only hasten their doom. Was history repeating itself? Had she made the same mistake? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert from the fleet's sensors. Something was approaching. A massive object drifting toward the sphere. Heart pounding, Leora rushed back to the control room. "It's not the devourer," Ravi reported after analyzing the readings. "But it's big. And fast." Karis crossed her arms, glaring at Leora. "Great. Just what we needed. A new problem while we're still figuring out the old ones." Leora ignored her, focusing instead on the incoming object. Whatever it was, it might hold answers or pose a threat. Either way, they couldn't ignore it. "We'll investigate," she decided, already feeling the pull of the fleet urging her forward. "Prepare a shuttle. We're going to find out what it is." As the team scrambled to comply, Leora braced herself for whatever lay ahead. The bond with the Ultima Armada gave her strength, but also reminded her of the fragility of humanity. Could she truly wield such power without losing herself completely? Only time would tell. For now, all she could do was keep moving forward. The shuttle emerged from the Dyson sphere, its engines humming softly as it approached the massive object detected earlier. Captain Leora Vance sat at the helm, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon of space. Behind her, Lieutenant Karras and Technician Ravi monitored their instruments, while Engineer Malik kept a wary hand on his sidearm. Tension filled the cramped cabin like static electricity. "It's getting closer," Ravi muttered, adjusting the scanner display. "Whatever it is, it's huge, bigger than anything I have ever seen." As they drew nearer, the object came into view, a swirling mass of black tendrils and shimmering biomechanical parts. It pulsed with an eerie light, as if alive, and radiated an oppressive energy that made the team's skin crawl. "That's no asteroid," Karras said grimly. "It's moving too deliberately, like it knows we're here." Lyra's jaw tightened. She recognized it instantly. The same monstrous entity depicted in the Caliph holograms. This was the Devourer, and it wasn't alone. Smaller drones swarmed around it, their jagged forms glinting menacingly in the starlight. "We need to get back," Malik urged, his voice trembling. "If that thing sees us." Before he could finish, one of the drones turned sharply toward them, accelerating with terrifying speed. Alarms blared inside the shuttle as the drone locked onto their position. "Hold on," Leora shouted, yanking the controls hard to evade. The shuttle jolted violently as the drone fired a beam of energy, narrowly missing them. Sparks flew from the console as systems overloaded. "They're targeting us," Ravi yelled, frantically trying to stabilize the ship. "We can't outrun them." Karras gripped her seat tightly. "Call the fleet. We need backup now." Leora didn't hesitate. Closing her eyes for a split second, she reached out mentally to the Ultima Armada. Instantly, 3 sleek warships detached from the sphere and streaked across the void, positioning themselves between the shuttle and the Devourer. "Prepare for combat," Leora ordered through the comms, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Fire at will." The battle erupted in a dazzling display of light and destruction. The warships unleashed barrages of plasma cannons and laser beams, tearing through the swarm of drones. Explosions lit up the darkness as debris scattered in all directions. For a moment, it seemed like the fleet had the upper hand. But then, the Devourer reacted. With a deafening roar that echoed in their minds rather than their ears, the central mass surged forward, absorbing the wreckage of its fallen drones. It grew larger, more menacing, as if feeding off the destruction. Then it unleashed a wave of psychic energy that rippled outward, striking the crew like a physical force. Lyra clutched her head, gritting her teeth against the overwhelming pain. Visions flooded her mind, planets being consumed, civilizations screaming in agony, endless hunger driving the entity forward. The others weren't spared either. Ravi collapsed onto the floor, clutching his temples, while Malik vomited uncontrollably. Even Karras, usually stoic, let out a strangled cry. "What is this?" Malik gasped, barely able to speak. "It's not just attacking us physically," Leora realized, forcing herself to focus. "It's attacking our minds, trying to break us." Summoning every ounce of willpower, she strengthened her connection to the fleet. The ships responded immediately, forming a protective barrier around the shuttle and firing concentrated bursts of energy at the Devourer's core. The entity recoiled, its tendrils writhing in apparent pain. "We heard it," Ravi exclaimed, struggling to regain his footing. "Keep going." But victory was short-lived. More drones poured out from the Devourer's body, replacing those destroyed by the fleet. Worse still, the psychic assault intensified, pushing the crew to their limits. "We can't keep this up," Karras admitted, her voice strained. "It's too strong." Leora clenched her fists, determination burning in her chest. They couldn't retreat, not yet. Not when they were so close to understanding their enemy. "Retreat isn't an option," she said firmly. "Not until we learn how to stop it." Summoning the full power of the Ultima Armada, Leora directed the ships to launch a final, coordinated strike. Beams of energy converged on the Devourer's center, creating a blinding explosion that shook the very fabric of space. When the light faded, the Devourer had retreated, but only temporarily. Its remaining drones scattered into the void, leaving behind an ominous silence. Back aboard the Dyson sphere, the crew collapsed in exhaustion, their bodies battered but alive. Leora stared out at the stars, her heart heavy with resolve. They had survived their first encounter, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Devourer would return, and next time, they might not be so lucky. The crew barely had time to recover from their first encounter with the Devourer before alarms blared again. Scans revealed a horrifying truth. The Devourer wasn't retreating, it was regrouping. Its drones were spreading across nearby star systems, consuming planets and growing stronger with every passing hour. Worse still, its psychic hum now permeated space like an invisible storm, driving anyone who ventured too close into madness. "We can't let it keep expanding," Captain Leora Vance said firmly during an emergency meeting in the Dyson sphere's control chamber. Her voice carried authority, though dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "If we wait for it to come to us, we'll lose everything." Lieutenant Karras crossed her arms, skepticism etched on her face. "And what's your plan?" "Charge straight into its swarm and hope the fleet holds up. We barely survived last time." Leora ignored the jab, focusing instead on the holographic map hovering above the table. She pointed to a dense nebula glowing faintly red in the distance. "We take the fight to them. Here. The Crimson Nebula has strong electromagnetic fields. If we use them strategically, we can disrupt the Devourer's coordination and trap parts of its swarm." Ravi leaned forward, studying the map. "It could work, but it's risky. One wrong move, and we'll be overwhelmed." "Riskier than sitting here waiting to die." Leora shot back. "We have no other choice." Despite lingering doubts, the team prepared for battle. The Ultima Armada mobilized fully this time, dozens of ships forming a tight formation as they approached the nebula. Leora stood at the helm of the flagship, her mind linked to the fleet. She could feel each ship pulsing with energy, ready to strike, but also fragile, like extensions of her own body. As they entered the nebula, the swirling clouds of gas and dust obscured their vision. Sensors flickered unpredictably, making navigation treacherous. Then, without warning, the Devourer struck. Hundreds of drones emerged from the haze, surrounding the fleet in seconds. Plasma beams and explosive projectiles filled the air, lighting up the crimson sky like fireworks. The ships responded instantly, weaving through the chaos with precision that bordered on supernatural. Under Leora's command, they formed defensive barriers while launching counterattacks, tearing through waves of enemies. But the Devourer adapted quickly. Its central mass loomed closer, emitting pulses of psychic energy that battered the crew's minds. Leora gritted her teeth, fighting back against the invasive visions threatening to overwhelm her. She channeled her pain into focus, directing the fleet to exploit weaknesses in the swarm's formation. "Use the nebulous fields," she shouted over the comms. "Channel the energy into concentrated bursts." The ships obeyed, drawing power from the electromagnetic currents around them. With a deafening roar, they unleashed devastating blasts that tore apart clusters of drones, scattering debris across the battlefield. For a brief moment, victory seemed possible. Then, disaster struck. One of the larger ships malfunctioned mid-combat, its engines spiraling out of control. Before anyone could react, it collided with a nearby vessel, triggering a chain reaction that destroyed 3 ships in rapid succession. Panic rippled through the fleet as gaps opened in their defenses, allowing more drones to breach their lines. "Captain, we're losing ground," Ravi yelled, his voice frantic. "We need to fall back." "No." Leora snapped, her eyes blazing with determination. Not yet. Hold the line. Summoning every ounce of strength, she pushed deeper into the bond with the fleet. Pain seared through her skull as memories of the Caliph flooded her mind once again. Their sacrifices, their failures. Drawing inspiration from their resilience, she devised a desperate plan. Form a perimeter around the central mass, she ordered. Funnel all remaining firepower into one final strike. The ships complied, pulling back just enough to regroup. As they converged on the Devourer's core, Leora activated the fleet's most powerful weapon, a concentrated beam capable of collapsing stars. With a deep breath, she gave the order. Fire. The beam surged forward, piercing through layers of biomechanical armor and striking the heart of the Devourer. A massive explosion rocked the nebula, sending shockwaves rippling outward. When the light faded, the central mass had shattered, its drones scattering aimlessly. For now, they had won. But as Leora stared at the wreckage, she knew the cost had been immense, and the Devourer wasn't truly gone. It would return, stronger and angrier than ever. Her resolve hardened. They had bought themselves time, but not peace. The aftermath of the battle left the crew battered and shaken. The Ultima Armada limped back to the Dyson sphere, its once mighty fleet reduced to half its original size. Ships floated in silence, their hulls scorched and weapons depleted. Inside the sphere, the team gathered in the dimly lit control chamber, exhaustion etched on every face. "We survived," Ravi said quietly, breaking the heavy silence. "But at what cost?" Leora sat slumped in her chair, staring blankly at the holographic map still glowing faintly above the table. Her body ached from the strain of commanding the fleet, but it was the weight of responsibility that truly burdened her. Every destroyed ship felt like a piece of herself torn away. Yet she knew they couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. "There's something we're missing," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "The Caliph created this fleet to fight the Devourer. There has to be more, a way to stop it permanently." Karis frowned. "You think there's some secret weapon hidden here? Something even bigger than the Ultima Armada?" "I don't know," Leora admitted. "But if there's a chance, we need to find it." With renewed determination, the team split up to search deeper into the Dyson sphere. They had only scratched the surface during their initial exploration. Now they delved into restricted areas marked by ominous symbols and locked doors. Each step revealed new wonders and darker truths about the Caliph. In one chamber, Leora discovered a vault protected by layers of security protocols. Using her bond with the fleet, she bypassed the locks, revealing rows of data crystals embedded in a glowing console. As she inserted one into the reader, holograms sprang to life, showing classified records detailing the Devourer's origins. "It started as an experiment," Leora whispered, scanning the information. "The Caliph wanted infinite energy, so they created a self-replicating organism capable of consuming matter and converting it into power." Malik leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening. That thing wasn't just a weapon. It was supposed to solve all their problems. But it evolved beyond their control, Leora continued, her voice grim. "When they tried to shut it down, it turned on them. And now, it's spreading across the galaxy, feeding on everything in its path." Ravi pointed to another section of the hologram. "Wait, look at this. It says here that the Devourer operates through a hive mind. If you disrupt its central frequency, you can fracture its coordination." Karis crossed her arms skeptically. "Sounds too good to be true. Why didn't the Caliph use this against it?" "They did," Leora replied, piecing together the fragments. "But it required immense power, and someone willing to sacrifice themselves to channel it. That's why they built the Ultima Armada, to amplify the signal." Her gaze hardened as realization dawned. "That's why I bonded with the fleet. This isn't just about commanding ships, it's about becoming a conduit for their full potential." Malik stepped back, alarmed. "You mean, using yourself to deploy the frequency weapon?" Leora nodded slowly. "It's the only way. but doing so will sever my connection to the fleet temporarily. Without me, the ships won't respond as quickly or effectively." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Karis broke the tension first. "There has to be another way. You've already risked enough." "There isn't," Leora said firmly, rising to her feet. "If we want to end this, we have to strike while the Devourer is weakened. We can't waste time looking for alternatives." As the others argued among themselves, Leora retreated to a quiet corner of the chamber, her mind racing. She knew the risks, knew that severing the bond might leave her permanently changed, or worse. But she also knew they couldn't keep running from the Devourer. Sooner or later, humanity would face extinction unless someone stood in its way. And if that someone had to be her, then so be it. Summoning the last reserves of her strength, Leora prepared to activate the frequency weapon. The fleet hummed around her, sensing her resolve. For the first time since bonding with the Ultima Armada, she felt not fear, but purpose. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, they had a real chance to win. The Dyson sphere buzzed with tension as Captain Leora Vance prepared to deploy the frequency weapon. The plan was clear. She would channel the Ultima Armada's full power through herself, amplifying the signal needed to disrupt the Devourer's hive mind. But clarity didn't make it any easier. Every step toward activation felt heavier than the last, as if the universe itself resisted what she was about to do. In the control chamber, the crew worked frantically to set up the final sequence. Ravi monitored energy levels while Malik double-checked the fleet's alignment. Lieutenant Karis paced back and forth, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She hadn't spoken much since Leora announced her decision, but her silence spoke volumes. "This is insane," Karis finally blurted out, stopping abruptly in front of Leora. "You're talking about tearing yourself apart for a weapon that might not even work. What happens if you fail? Or worse, what happens if it kills you?" Leora met her gaze steadily. "Then at least I'll have tried. If we don't take this shot now, the Devourer will come back stronger. And next time, we won't stand a chance." Karis clenched her fists, frustration boiling over. "And who decides that? You? You've been acting like some kind of martyr ever since we got here, throwing yourself into danger without thinking about the rest of us." Her words struck a nerve, but Leora refused to back down. "This isn't just about me, Karis. It's about everyone out there, the colonies, Earth, every life depending on us to stop this thing. If I can give them a fighting chance, then it's worth it." Before Karis could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. On one of the monitors, several ships from the Ultima Armada suddenly broke formation, turning their weapons inward. "What's going on?" Malik shouted, panic rising in his voice. Ravi scanned the readings, his face pale. It's the fleet. Someone's overriding your commands, Captain." Lyora's heart sank as realization dawned. Turning sharply, she saw Karis standing near a secondary console, her hands hovering above the controls. Behind her stood two other crew members, loyalists who had always questioned Leora's leadership. "You betrayed us," Leora said, her voice cold and steady despite the betrayal burning inside her. Karis stepped forward, her expression hardening. "I'm saving us. You're willing to sacrifice everything, including yourself, for a hopeless cause. We need to retreat, regroup, and find another way. Your obsession with this weapon is going to get us all killed." "No," Leora shot back, stepping closer. "Your fear is going to doom us. If we run now, the Devourer will hunt us down. There is no other way." For a moment, the room froze. Then chaos erupted. Alarms screamed as rogue ships fired warning shots, forcing the loyal members of the crew to dive for cover. Lyora lunged toward Karis, determined to regain control of the fleet, but Malik intercepted her. "Captain, please," he pleaded, holding her back. "We can't fight each other. Not now." As the mutiny unfolded, the Devourer seized its opportunity. A swarm of drones descended upon the sphere, drawn by the commotion. Explosions rocked the structure as the biomechanical creatures breached its defenses, flooding corridors with destruction. "We don't have time for this," Lyora yelled, breaking free from Malik's grip. Ignoring the chaos around her, she reached out mentally to the fleet. Pain surged through her body as she forced her connection to override Karis's sabotage. One by one, the ships realigned under her command. Summoning every ounce of strength, Lyora activated the frequency weapon. Energy coursed through her veins like liquid fire, threatening to consume her entirely. Her vision blurred, and her legs buckled beneath her, but she held on. "Fire," she whispered hoarsely. A massive pulse of energy erupted from the fleet, spreading outward in a wave of light and sound. The Devourer's drones faltered, their coordination shattered. For the first time, the unstoppable force seemed confused. But the cost was immense. As the pulse faded, Lyora collapsed to the floor, her connection to the fleet severed. Darkness crept into her vision, and the last thing she heard before losing consciousness was Karis's voice, trembling with guilt. "What have we done?" The battle was far from over, but for now, humanity had survived another day. When Lyora awoke, the world around her was quiet, too quiet. Her body felt heavy, as if every muscle had been drained of strength. Blinking against the dim light of the medical bay, she tried to sit up but winced at the sharp pain shooting through her chest. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped softly in rhythm with her heartbeat. "You're awake," Malik said, his voice low and relieved. He stood nearby, holding a tablet displaying her vitals. "We weren't sure you'd make it." Lyora groaned, rubbing her temples. Memories of the mutiny and the frequency weapon flooded back. The betrayal, the chaos, the searing agony of channeling the fleet's power. She glanced at Malik, her voice hoarse. "The Devourer, did it work?" "It fractured their hive mind," he replied cautiously. "Their drones are scattered and disorganized. But the central mass is still out there, retreating deeper into space. It's only a matter of time before it regroups." Karis entered the room then, her face pale and guilt-ridden. She hesitated by the doorway before stepping closer. "Captain, I'm sorry. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. I didn't realize how much we needed you, or the fleet." Lyora stared at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "Apology accepted. But next time, trust me when I say we don't have the luxury of doubt." Karis swallowed hard, nodding silently. Whatever rift had formed between them would take time to heal, if it ever did. Despite her weakened state, Lyora insisted on returning to command. With the fleet partially crippled and tensions high among the crew, they couldn't afford delays. Scans revealed the Devourer's central mass fleeing toward an uncharted region of space, a colossal organism larger than anything they'd encountered before. "This is our chance," Lyora declared during a tense strategy meeting. "If we can destroy the core, we might end this once and for all." "But how?" Rady asked, his brow furrowed. "Our ships are damaged, and you're barely standing. We're not ready for another fight." "We'll never be ready," Lyora countered sharply. "But waiting won't change that. If we let the Devourer escape now, it'll come back stronger and smarter." After heated debate, the team agreed to pursue the enemy. Using makeshift repairs and salvaged parts, they patched together enough ships to form a strike force. Lyora took the helm of the flagship, though her connection to the fleet remained fragile. Each command sent jolts of pain through her body, a reminder of the toll the frequency weapon had taken. As they approached the Devourer's core, the sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The creature loomed like a living planet, its surface writhing with black tendrils and glowing veins. Smaller drones swarmed protectively around it, forming layers of defense. "This isn't going to be easy," Karis muttered, gripping her console tightly. "No," Lyora replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "But it has to be done." The battle began with a barrage of fire from both sides. The fleet darted through the swarm, targeting weak points while avoiding retaliatory strikes. Lyora directed the ships with precision, her instincts guiding them even as her body screamed in protest. Finally, they'd reached the core, a pulsating nexus at the center of the mass. Lyora ordered the remaining ships to focus all firepower on the target. Beams of energy converged, tearing through layers of biomechanical armor. For a brief moment, victory seemed within reach. Then, the Devourer fought back. A massive wave of psychic energy surged outward, crippling the fleet's systems and overwhelming the crew's minds. Pain exploded in Lyora's skull as visions of destruction flooded her thoughts. Desperation clawed at her, but so did resolve. Summoning the last reserves of her strength, she severed her remaining link to the fleet, channeling its full power into one final devastating strike. The flagship unleashed a concentrated beam that pierced straight through the core, igniting a cataclysmic explosion. When the light faded, the Devourer was gone. Exhausted and broken, Lyora slumped in her chair, knowing the cost of victory weighed heavily on them all. Yet, amidst the wreckage, hope flickered faintly. They had survived. And for now, that was enough.